Hello everybody, it's Mike coming to you on a cold day here in the sticks. It's the first time I've put my heating on this autumn so far, and I'm discovering how expensive it is to actually use any kind of heating at all under the current energy prices. That might be a story for another day. In the meantime, let's talk about this. Picture the scene, if you can. A candidate for election goes on the doorstep and meets people who say, "I don't like the child benefit cap. I don't have children myself, or not more than two, but I understand that lifting the cap would be the single best thing a government can do to relieve child poverty. And I know that child poverty has been rising since the Tories took office in 2010. The candidate then says it's not Labour policy to lift the cap at this time because it will cost £3.5 billion, if I recall correctly. That in itself is manipulative because it ignores the boost to the economy that paying £3.5 billion into it will create. People on child benefit are mostly poor, so all the money will be used to pay for things the household needs, and that will create a ripple effect through the economy as a whole, and that money passes through it until being taxed out at a later date. But that was Labour's line. The candidate goes on to say that if the situation eases, they will push for the cap to be lifted at a later date, sometime during the course of the Parliament, whenever it's feasible. They then get elected. Once they are in Parliament, they are told, "The benefits bill is too high. The optics are terrible. We need to get it down." Here's an idea. We can use HM revenue and customs figures to work out whether people are still receiving child benefit after emigrating out of the country. The law says they should be cut off after 8 weeks. A pilot scheme goes into effect, and then it is rolled out across the country. 23,500 families lose their child benefit, and the MP is contacted by a wave of disgruntled parents who want to know why the government is telling them they've left the country when they very clearly haven't. It turns out the data was inaccurate, and tens of thousands of people have been harmed in error. The MP needs to say something that will smooth over the enormity of the harm. So, in the knowledge that there is huge anti-immigrant sentiment in the UK at the moment, they tell the families and the press they're very sorry. But this was an attempt to catch migrants going back to their own country and still claiming benefits. This story is not one, but two classic examples of the dysfunctional relationship between voters and the people they elect. The most dysfunctional relationship of all, if you like. In the first instance, by signalling empathy and understanding, but then saying it's not party policy to lift the cap right now, maybe later if circumstances allow, the candidate is using a form of subtle pre-commitment manipulation. They're acknowledging the voters' concerns while preemptively deflecting action, making the voter feel heard, but simultaneously ensuring the party's priorities aren't challenged. So they appear to listen, but don't commit. "Oh, we might do this later," keeps hope alive without binding the politician. And they frame inaction as necessity. It would cost too much, which signals rationality while deflecting scrutiny. What happens once they're in office is active betrayal, supported with gaslighting. Having been led to believe the government's child benefit policy would protect the families who still receive it, or at least not harm them, voters discover that it has done the opposite. The public justification reframes the harm as necessary, targeted, or morally justified, shifting blame to others, migrants, and attempting to make voters accept the violation as reasonable. This is a betrayal of trust. The system did exactly what it was supposed to prevent, harming voters' interests. It is gaslighting. We're sorry, but this was really about protecting the system from foreign claimants. Reframing harm as not what you thought it was, but instead a moral or procedural necessity. And it is at least an attempt to exploit voter prejudice, leveraging anti-immigrant sentiment to normalize or excuse the error. They then appeal to the voter or voters to forgive them, saying they will rectify the mistake and make sure it doesn't happen again, and assuring the voter that they are still the best person to represent them in the future. It's the political version of the classic, "I did it for you," in romantic relationships. How many of us have been on the receiving end of those words, or something similar? How many of us have been persuaded by them? Alternatively, how many of us recognize them for the self-serving tripe that they are and told the other person to take a hike? Yet we vote the same liars, manipulators, and gaslighters back into Parliament time and time again. Shouldn't we be taking this relationship a little more seriously?